Welcome to Chapter 1, American Government and Civic Engagement from the American Government Open Stax textbook, 3rd edition. So in this chapter, we're going to talk about the various formats of politics and economic systems and how the United States forms that. Of course, we'll touch a little bit about civic engagement. So American citizens have the opportunity to participate in 3 levels of government that we have here, whether it's local, state, or federal. And that is, of course, through civic engagement. There are various formats of civic engagement, whether that's through voting, whether that's through demonstrating, and, of course, speaking out on important issues, which is another form of called public opinion. And also other formats of whether that's calling or sending letters to your locally or state or federal officials, whether it's going to a local council meeting. That is, of course, another format of civic engagement. So there are 2 formats that go into government. The first, of course, is what is government, and that is by a system which society organizes itself. So how does society want to format its way that authority figures can control the society? And politics is as a reference to those trying to gain power, exercise control within the government. So government and economic systems, there are certain formats of government and, of course, economic systems that are functioning throughout the world. One of them is democracy, by which it's government by citizens. And, of course, usually when there is democracy, there's a format of capitalism. And capitalism is an economic system which means the production is controlled by individuals and not the government. Socialism is a different form of government. It advocates for public or government control, whether it's directly or through some type of regulation. Oligarchies is another form of government, then that is when a small class of elites, whether that's families or other styles of family class, control politics and the economics of that particular said government or another country. United States, we are representative democracy. We have adhered to a capitalist economic system. In a capitalist system, private businesses produce and sell consumer goods and services. So whether that's your local grocery store, whether that's your restaurant, and other formats of services and goods that you eat or get your services at. Some goods or services, of course, such as public safety and education, cannot be produced for a gain or profit. That's why we have public education. That's why we have public hospitals. We have police services and ambulance services and fire department services provided by the government, of course. They need to provide some public goods for the people. Some governments also protect common goods, right? So natural resources and such as water and such, to make sure that's all protected and right for the people. So, of course, you can see here an example, right, that the ambulance here, Chicago Fire Department, that is a locally government of services provided to the people. So, of course, paid by the government through tax bases, right? So your taxes provide for such services. Once between, of course, we have goods. Here is another. We talk about capitalism and private goods provided. So sometimes some goods can be provided by private goods. Other times, provided by the common goods of the government. So types of government going back. So in a democracy, we have people who, of course, have a control of it or aspects of it. So, of course, that's a form of government which political power influences the institutions and such. In a representative democracy, which is what we have here in the United States, the citizens don't govern directly. So in our representative democracy in the United States, typical individuals don't have complete control of the government or its institutions. The individuals elect people, which will be called elected representatives, to represent them in a form of government. So, of course, there are some often have a check on the citizens, the representative democracies. In a direct democracy, people participate directly in the government decisions instead of relying on elected representatives. That only really direct democracy. We don't have that necessarily in whole in the United States of America. There are certain aspects in the East Coast where there's a small portions of towns that do have direct democracy, but overall, the United States functions in a representative democracy. So you can see here in this small town in Massachusetts, you see here this is direct democracy. Types of government: monarchy and totalitarianism. So another form of government is when in absolute monarchy, one single individual holds the true political power. This used to be the case when we had kings and queens rule the world. So a long time ago, centuries ago, Great Britain used to have a monarchy, which the king controlled everything. And of course, that changed over time to lessen their power. Now, of course, Great Britain does continue to have a monarchy, but now it has a parliament where we have elected officials that represent the individuals. And of course, the monarchy does not have complete control over the government in the United Kingdom or Great Britain. In a totalitarian government, under totalitarian governments, the state, usually controlled by a single leader or a small group of elites, controls every aspect of the individual's lives. So we see that throughout various parts of the world, such as North Korea, where one single person, the individual, has complete control of the entire country. Elitism versus pluralism. So in a elite theory, is government holds that a small group of elites control the power, and of course leaves very little influence for the individuals. There is debate in the United States of what we have: a small group of elites that control the media, they control government, they control business. In the pluralist theory of government holds that competing interest groups influence the government and hold political power. So in the United States, we have this theory where, of course, there's interest groups out there who try to compete for the influence of government, whether it's a local, state, or federal level, because they want to see fit the government that they see. So we see individuals from the Conservative Party, the Republican Party, or those affiliated with that try to have control or influence of the government because they want control over how they see that the government should function, as well as the other side, the Democrats or liberal aspects of the party, who want to also influence the government to show that they have a vast interest in how they see fit for the government to hold power. So a review question for you is, in which form of government does a small group of elite hold political power? So think about it. And again, in which form of government does a small group of elite people hold political power? Think about that and answer it on your own. The four most recent U.S. presidents also all graduated from an Ivy League university. So we will talk about this and when we talk about the presidency. So, Ivy League institutions have a big influence on the U.S. where U.S. presidents come from. The trade-off perspectives. The trade-off perspective is acknowledges competing interests. Of course, whether elitist or pluralist, these competing interests produce government actions and public policy. So usually, when there is a particular influence on government, whether that's Democrat or Republican, which of course we'll talk about when we talk about political parties, we see their competing interests inside. So when you have a liberal or a Democrat government, you see that the government gets more influence, gets more in hands of in the individuals, has more say on the everyday lives. And of course, conservatives try to lessen government and reduce government influence, especially on business. So you can see here individual Ohio protesting fracking, public meetings, of course, trade-offs. Changes in involvement. Traditionally, citizens engage in democracy through advocacy, whether small groups or through churches or local labor unions. Today, of course, there's still of course small groups and meeting at churches or through local labor unions. But changes in society and technology has left citizens with less time to be active members of civic organizations. And of course, people have now taken more to social media, whether use a hashtag or create memes or call out individuals on Facebook or other social media. So people have taken it to their own hands to become their own advocates on social media, and become more involved that way than become more involved in actually going to local meetings, or being part of a demonstration. So why get involved? In social capital, it's the collective value of all social networks and willingness to work together for a common goal. Civic engagement, of course, influences government. So why do you want to get involved in in civic engagement, or getting involved in some format of civic engagement? Because civic engagement does have a major role in how government is influenced in the policies and actions that takes place. When a large group of individuals protest a certain policy or a certain law, that gets the attention of government officials, and whether or not they deem that it's a good policy or an action doesn't always work. However, the louder the voices, perhaps the louder the change will become. So if there's no civic engagement, government's not really going to do any much changes if they don't hear a kickback, or of course they don't hear from individuals that they don't like that. For example, whenever the government tries to do anything relates to older individuals, whether that's their health services or raise the prices of medicine, of course the older individuals will make a ruckus, and of course do some form of civic engagement by calling the representative, because older individuals have a higher rate of voter participation, and of course it's all about votes for politicians. So they don't want to uh, they don't want to get their votes. They don't want to see their votes go down because of for a certain policy that their voter institute their constituency does not like. A representative democracy requires an informed citizenry. So, of course, in order for a representative democracy to work, and that, of course, that is when when individuals elect a politician to represent them. Of course, it's better to have an informed citizenry in order to vote for the policy that they form. So, when a particular individual is running for office, they want to make sure that individual is holding up hearing to the policies that they see fit, that they want to see in government. Pathways to engagement, right? Citizen engagement may be undertaken individually or by a member of group. Again, getting out to vote, whether that's a local, state, or federal election. Of course, that's through discussing ideas. Again, you can work for a political campaign or volunteer for a political campaign, fundraise money, register people to vote, joining protests, marches, or boycotting businesses that don't support their view. That, of course, is ways to engage. And of course, another way that we've seen engagement over the years is through social media. Some people may agree with it. Some people may agree with it that it's impactful, but that, of course, that is another way to be civically engaged. So of course, this was the print above was published in 1870, celebrates the extension of the right to vote of the first African American men. So, factors of engagement, right? So approximately 2/3 of Americans are engaged in some form of political action in 2018 during a presidential election year. What a presidential election year means is every 4 years in the United States we elect a president. And so that is what's considered a presidential election year. And so, every 4 years. So in 2008, there was a presidential election, in 2012, 2016, 2020, and there's going to be another presidential election year in 2024. These activities, of course, there's a lot of things that are going on in forms of engagement. So if you yourself want to get involved with a particular presidential candidate, you can get involved in their campaign. So, okay, as you can see here, the voters lined up outside during a polling station in 2008. Factors of engagement. Americans under the age of 30 are less likely to engage in partisan politics. That has been done through studies. There's always that stigma that sticks with young people that they don't civically engaged in partisan politics. Of course, as younger people tend to acclaim as independents or Democrats or Republican, and of course they are less likely to participate. However, That's not, that is up to debate to individuals how they pertain to see it, um, whether or not young people are civically engaged or not. But of course, social media has taken individuals to participate on their own, by of course forming some sort of boycott or protesting through social media. So of course here you see some individuals helping out, so volunteers during the Occupy Wall Street movement. So, in addition to age, civic engagement is also greatly influenced by wealth and education. Wealthier, more educated citizens are most likely to vote, and of course, that's always up to debate whether an individual's wealth and education. But there are studies that show that the more education that one has, the more likely they are to be civically engaged, and also wealth has another aspect of that to be more likely to vote and, of course, be civically engaged. The latest data show that more younger people are now choosing to affiliate and identify with one of the two major parties rather than choosing to be independent. So, of course, you can see here the different types of format. You can see that the majority of the country has a form of a representative democracy. You can see here countries that are colored in red, like China, Vietnam, have oligarchy form of government. Countries that are colored in yellow are monarchies, where the people have very little government. So one of the most known, recognized monarchies is in Saudi Arabia, for example. They still have a form of monarchy. One particular individual there is a king in Saudi Arabia, and so that particular individual holds the power. But as you can see here, again, throughout the world, there is a representative democracy. Last review question that you want to answer yourself. Take a minute to answer. What political activities can people engage other than running for office? Not everyone is going to run for office. And of course, if you meet the requirements of running for office, of course, there are different requirements for being running for example, at the federal level. There's different, requirements to run for U.S. representative or U.S. Senate seat or the U.S. presidency. However, you don't have to run for office. But again, what political activities can people engage other than running for office? Think about that for a minute and answer on your own. Thank you, and that was chapter 1.